Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. This is where top performers share their secrets to help you achieve your personal and professional goals. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and together with my amazing guests, we bring you inspiring and actionable insights that are aimed to help you take your life and your business to the next level. Ranked in the top 2% globally, this podcast really is a must listen. And whether you're tuning in for entrepreneurial tips, career advice, or personal development strategies, or honestly anything in between, because I get some really fascinating guests to come on the show and we may talk about just about anything. So get ready to turn inspiration into action, challenges into triumphs, and dreams into reality. And today we're talking about a very important topic and one it's impossible to ignore. In fact, I was talking about it with somebody the other day, and the topic is end-of-life care. It's never easy to broach that topic, but it's important, really important, to have these conversations before a crisis arises. And ideally, these discussions should happen when the person is still able to express their wishes and their preferences, and you can talk it out. It might feel heavy and frightening, and it is. Been there, done it. But addressing it sooner rather than later ensures that everyone is on the same page and the individual's wishes are respected. So today I am welcoming Dr. Bob Uslander, and he's an MD with 35 years of medical experience, and he, along with his wife, Elizabeth Uslander, a seasoned spiritual counselor and medical social worker, are the founders of Empowered Endings. And it's a platform that aims to eliminate fear around end-of-life experiences and provides comprehensive support for individuals and their loved ones. And they believe that by planning, listening, so important, and honoring the wishes of people in their final chapter, they can help rewrite the tragic narrative associated with death. Welcome to Your Partner in Success. Let me try that again. Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio, Bob. It's good to have you here, and I'm so sorry that Elizabeth wasn't able to join us today.
Thanks, Denise. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share amazing work that we've been doing, and I'm sorry that Elizabeth isn't here. Hopefully, there'll be an opportunity for her to come back and connect with you at some point in the future. She's just under the weather today and wasn't able to make it.
I understand, and definitely I'd like to have her come back maybe in the new year when she's feeling better. Right now we're booking through March and April, so
Great.
maybe
good.
in the spring she'll feel better.
Well,
I
she
don't know
better.
that.
I'm hoping she'll be better by then. So
One of my sisters is always sick at Christmas time. It's amazing. Always. She never feels good at Christmas. We think it's psychosomatic, but
yeah, I think if it happens that often, I think you might want to. There might be something to that.
we just leave her be. She's going to do what she wants to do, and we don't even bother to get offended by it. She doesn't like Christmas. We understand that. So tell me a bit about you and Empowered Endings, because you and I and Elizabeth had a pretty interesting pre-call some months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hate pushing websites. I hate pushing podcasts out so far because often, and I have to be honest about it, I've forgotten what we talked about. I was interested enough to say, yes, come on the show. But with you two, I remember every word of it. So I don't have to ask you to remind me about anything, but tell us about Empower. I can't talk today. I'm sorry. It's late in the afternoon and I think I'm going to be psychosomatic today. I may need a nap. But what empowers and what defines empowered endings? I'm sorry, I can't talk, but I'm going to keep going on anyway.
We get it. So empowered endings is it's our vision. It's the vision that we have together developed to provide a whole kind of a multi-layer approach to supporting people in their end-of-life journeys and supporting the loved ones and the families and being able to help navigate end of life journeys in a way that is more more holistic, more supported, and reasonable. And it's also an effort to teach healthcare providers and people who are really committed to providing support for patients and families the tools and resources and inspiration to do it better. End of life care for a long time, and I'll share a bit more about how I got to this place and how Elizabeth got to this place. But the bottom line is end of life care is often fractured, and it's often siloed, and it's often inadequate. And people don't know enough about what's truly happening, and they don't find out about it until they're in the midst of it, in the muck. And often by that time it's too late to really start over and take a different approach that would be much more gentle and peaceful um, and dignified. So we've seen enough horror stories. Both as an emergency physician for 25 years, I witnessed many unfortunate, tragic endings, and then as a palliative care and hospice physician for a number of years, I saw how many holes and gaps there were in our current healthcare system that caused people to struggle needlessly. And so we have built a model that fills those gaps and that allows people to die just much more gently and peacefully,
Well,
consistently.
when you say that there's a lot of needless things happening, can you give us a couple of examples?
Well, there's so many, but I'll start with just a couple. Many people are being treated far beyond what's reasonable. So patients with cancer, as an example, are often being given uh, treatments, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, clinical trials, experimental treatments that just don't make sense. And if they really understood what the impact was likely to be and the true potential benefit, they would never agree to it. They would make different choices, and they would live their life very differently through the final weeks or months of life. A lot of people end up in the hospital when that's absolutely not where they want or should be. They end up in nursing homes when that's not where they should be, um, because the healthcare system doesn't typically think outside the box. They don't typically look at all the options, um, and they kind of do things by reflex and based on what's in the best interest of the organization or in the individuals who are sort of making decisions. There's a lot of greed, and there's a lot of fear of liability that influences the way people are cared for. And
I wondered, I catch myself, and I mean no disrespect to the medical community. I think you guys are heroes in so many ways, but I also think that there's an awful lot of experimenting that goes on that leads directly to we don't want to get sued.
I agree, having been in very involved, integral in that system for many years. It influences a lot. The fear influences a lot. So does just the lack of creativity and the lack of willingness to sort of buck the system, or um, the doctors don't have enough time to really get fully engaged in what's happening with the patients. At end of life, physicians are largely removed from the equation. A lot of what happens is people are overwhelmed and they're just trying to get through their days, and so patients and families get moved along on this conveyor belt, and the path of least resistance is more treatment, more tests, more hospitalizations, more transitions to nursing homes or hospice, and no one's like really paying attention to what the patient wants and needs, or giving the patient information about their options. And what we've identified in our combined careers and in our individual careers, and now in our combined experience, is sort of the major gaps that people are facing when they're approaching this end of life period, and we'll go through some of those so that people have some takeaways for sure.
Right, definitely. I remember talking with you about my brother, and I just posted on Facebook about him because he had a double lung transplant, and the anniversary was a couple of days ago, and he had 8 extra years of life. But what happened that last year, we were all just saying, what the hell are you doing to him?
Mm,
Leave him be. He's going to make his own decisions. Quit trying to do this, that, and the other. You already know he's dying. He knows he's dying. Quit poking him. It got ugly. It really did.
are you referring to the healthcare providers who who you would have liked to have had those
Well,
conversations with, or
just
family members,
no,
or?
the family members were all on board. He actually, and he told us all, he said, listen, when it gets to where I'm in so much pain, I can't take it anymore, I will stop dialysis. He had done his homework, and he knew that he
Hmm.
would live very long and it would be largely painless, he thought. And I got a phone call. He said, I didn't go to dialysis today. And we knew. And he was gone 3 days later.
Mm,
The family was there with him. Yeah, as much I couldn't be because I was too far away, but his from what I could see, and this is just my observation, I'm not lobbying any accusations, but from my bubble away from it, I thought he was over medicated. I thought he was in the hospital way too often, that his care team wasn't talking with his surgery team. And there was just too many people saying, oh, you got to do this. And he was over medicated. I promise you he was.
hmm.
And there was just so many things that, as a complete outsider, my eyebrows were going up to my hairline saying, what the hell are they thinking?
Hmm.
That's, and it was 3 years ago, and I'm still wondering what they were thinking.
Yeah. Well, part of a huge part of why we do what we do is so that 3 years later, family members, loved ones don't still suffer the consequences. They don't still suffer from angst and guilt and regret and remorse because they allowed things to happen in a way that traumatized their loved one or made their last days a struggle when they didn't need to be. Um, one of the examples, one of the things that we support patients through is medical aid in dying, which is not legal in all states, but it is in California and 10 other states and jurisdictions. So that a person who has a terminal condition and is going to die within 6 months, or presumably going to die within 6 months, and is competent to make decisions, can get access to a prescription of medicine that if they choose to take it, they'll fall asleep within a few minutes and die very gently and peacefully within minutes to hours. So, I mean, in your brother's case, he kind of almost did a similar thing by stopping dialysis. That's clearly going to end your life in a. Sometimes it could be a few days, sometimes it could be longer. But medical aid in dying gives people peace of mind. It gives them empowerment and allows them to choose when it's time for them to go, when the quality of their life has eroded to a point that's no longer acceptable to them. And they can just, at the time of their choosing, with the people of their choosing, go peacefully and make their transition.
And that's what
Now,
happened. And you're talking about, because I remember we talked about this during the pre-interview. I had my sister's best friend, her husband, and this was a time where it was legal, and then for about 10 or 14 days it wasn't. It was overturned.
mhm,
Remember that? But he did that, and I've never heard anything but powerful mentions about how that happened.
yeah.
Everybody,
Well,
this is his choice. We're going to be here. He's going to be upstairs alone by himself. It's his choice.
mhm.
And I mean, he did it his way, and his family absolutely agreed with it. My brother was there. He knew that that was an option for him. So he did have choices, thank goodness.
Yeah, yeah, and he made his choice. That was the choice that was right for him. The point
Exactly.
of the point that I was kind of making a bit long-windedly about the medical aid dying is when people find out that this is an option for them, but they were not told about it. Nobody, especially people who have been suffering, who have been in and out of the hospital, or or suffering from the effects of their progressive cancer or end stage heart failure, or the really challenging impact of the treatments that they've been doing, and they're clearly struggling. And they have even expressed to people that they wish their suffering could be over, and no one has told them about this option. Nobody has informed them, either because they didn't think it was appropriate because of their own beliefs, or they didn't know about it. When people find out that this was an option that they didn't know about, and because of that lack of knowledge, their loved one had to struggle well beyond what they would have agreed to or been willing to had they known there was another option. They're angry. They're they feel like somehow they were let down and they were misled or misguided, and that stays with you. And our goal is to try to keep, like avoid the trauma, avoid the PTSD, avoid the years or decades of anxiety and fear that are the result of a really challenging end of life journey, that you had to witness or participate in. So there's a lot that can be done that's not being done. We want to see a whole new field of medicine developing around end of life care that really involve a, a team approach, not just hospice, because hospice, although it's wonderful, a lot of value, and there's a lot of amazing people who are in hospice care, it's often just not enough.
And you're right. I mean, I saw that with my mom. I've seen a lot of death in the last few years, so
Mm.
this really resonates with me. I'm not trying to equate human life to animal life, but when we know, most of us, when we know we've got a pet that is in agony or dying, we don't hesitate. We're off to the vet.
Yeah.
The kindest, most compassionate thing to do. We don't say, well, you go sit over there in the corner, I'll clean up after you, but you're going to have to die on your own. We
Yeah.
just don't do that.
One of the most common questions that's kind of posed, it's a hypothetical question that people don't necessarily expect an answer to, but they say, why do we treat our pets better than we treat our people?
Exactly. That was my
And
point.
yeah. And I guess my response to that is, we don't. We treat our people with the same or more love, dignity, compassion that anybody would treat their pets. And and that's what we're trying to spread. We're trying to strike from anybody's mind the question of why we don't treat our people as well as we treat our pets. So that's our goal.
And that leads me to my next question, and I think you might have answered it. What inspired the creation and the building of I want to say empowered industries. I don't know why, but empowered endings. I've got it. Empowered endings. Was there any particular moment where you guys looked at each other and said, we've got to do something about this?
Well, I don't know that it was a particular moment, but it was a series of um, of experiences that over a period. Oh, so the practice started back in 2016. I was an emergency physician for 25 years. I had, of course, in the emergency room, no one dies well. Everybody dies traumatically, and it's often kind of mayhem, and it's almost always considered an abject failure. Somehow the system failed, we failed, and so that built up over time. I had a beautiful experience about 10 years into my practice where a close friend of mine died at the age of 32, after a long battle with melanoma, and I got to be a part of that journey with him and his family, and a very close group of friends. And I, for the first time, was able to witness a beautiful end of life and a death that was very peaceful. It was truly the first time that I had seen that happen, and the first time that I saw hospice come in and work their magic, and that really stuck with me. And about 15 years later, I dabbled I had started a house call practice, and I had done some hospice care with some of those patients that were homebound, and then as I got to a point where emergency medicine was just becoming too stressful, too challenging for me to feel like I could continue long term. I found myself called to providing end of life care. Almost, I had basically an epiphany, a download from the universe that made it very clear that this was the path that I needed to follow. And then I met some people in that world in San Diego who guided me towards an opportunity to work in that space in the traditional healthcare model. So I got to work in palliative care and hospice care, and it was beautiful because it was so much more kind of aligned with what I wanted to be doing. And I was going into people's homes and developing relationships and providing support, but the system was still filled with holes and gaps and limitations. So I started my own practice in 2016 that was really designed to enhance the support and care that patients and families got through that end of life journey, and to supplement what was already kind of being offered by the healthcare system. Elizabeth had come on her own journey, kind of parallel, and was involved. She was working as a social worker and bereavement coordinator at a hospice company in San Diego, and was also a very strong advocate and proponent and educator around end of life options, because the End of Life Option Act in California was just about ready to come into existence. The law had passed, and they were preparing for it to become effective a few months later. And we met, and she joined the practice as a social worker and then started running the practice. And then over a period of a few years, we just combined me doing the medical part, her doing the counseling, and like showing up as like an end of life doula to really support patients and families in this deep, deep way. And we noticed that our patients died more peacefully than the general population, and our families and loved ones afterwards were so incredibly grateful. And it seemed like the experience that they had was so different than the traditional default experience that people were having. And we just kind of looked back and said, well, what are we doing? What is it that we do that allows for these experiences to be so much different, and for people to be writing these long letters and cards of gratitude for the experience that they had and were able to offer to their loved one. And so that was how we sort of identified the gaps that exist in the traditional models, and what we do that was different, that kind of really helped to fill those gaps and support people beautifully. And so it wasn't a moment; it was lots of moments, and it was lots of times when we it was all those cards, really the cards, the letters, the emails from the families that let us know we were doing something right.
Well, if from what I'm hearing is that you heard people, you listened in between the lines, you heard what their fears were, what their worries were. I'm guessing that most people, it's always been my experience anyway, is that most people are not worried so much about them. They're worried about their family. They're worried about their pets. They're worried about everybody pretty much but them. Has that
Yeah.
been your experience?
Yes. Often they're consumed with with being a burden, right?
Mm.
They they worry how people are going to be managed once they're gone. Um, so listening is a huge part of it, like, and part of it is also just having the experience. I became a much better palliative care and end of life physician after I supported both of my parents through their end of life journeys. I became more understanding of the experience that other people were having, of the family members, the loved ones, the children, the spouses, as I after I had navigated those journeys with my parents who died about a year apart. Um, as I was just becoming, as I was just sort of entering this space. And so that was really valuable. And I know Elizabeth has had her own personal experiences of loss and grief that also informed and infused her with the knowledge and the wisdom of how to show up for people. Plus, she's also just an amazing empath and just a deeply spiritual soul. But you know what? The biggest thing that we identified is it's just being willing to show up. It's not rocket science to take better care of people. It's just showing up for them in their times of need. And it doesn't mean that you have to drop everything that you're doing and devote 2 hours to addressing this situation. Often it's just a text, like, mom is afraid and she's there's so many different things that can come up, and all it takes is just being there and letting them know that you're responsive and present with them and there for them. And it doesn't end at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when offices close. You need to be able to be present for people when they express their needs. So this isn't the model that we have, and the practice that we have isn't going to be right for everybody. It's not going to be right for somebody who just wants a 9-to-5 job and wants to then put it all aside and go off and not be available and present the rest of the time. So it's a level of commitment that we're finding many people have, but not everybody.
I understand. And you mentioned that, on top of it not being for everybody, but just being there, being present, listening, and, these floods of cards and thank yous, and I'm guessing cakes and cookies came your way. You didn't see that, did you, when you were in the operating room, or not the operating room, but the emergency room? I'm guessing that how people came to you and reacted to you probably changed fairly dramatically when you changed how you were operating with them.
It did, because we developed relationships that often the relationships were very intense and relatively short. They might only be a matter of days or weeks at times. I also have patients that I've been seeing for 5 or 6 years, but many of these people, we come to work with them in the very final days or weeks of their life and help to guide and navigate them to the finish line. But those connections become very deep, and there's nothing that sort of interferes with that connection. We come in and it's so important to us to let people know that they're seen and heard and held, and they feel that and they respond to it. And so that's what allows these deep connections to happen quickly. In the emergency room, I actually found it pretty it was a fun challenge to try to make those connections, but instead of doing it over days or weeks, we had to do it over minutes or hours. And one of the things I enjoyed about being an ER doctor was being able to help people who came in there and were just terrified and really anxious about what was happening and frustrated because they've been waiting too long, and then to be able to bring down the level of stress and just often use humor, just meet them where they were. So even though we didn't get a lot of cakes and cookies and cards, there was a sense of satisfaction about being able to take a situation that was incredibly stressful and scary, and then seeing, an hour or two later, the person walking out of the emergency room smiling and, saying, "Huh, that wasn't such a bad experience."
Right. Kind of like going to the dentist. Well, that didn't hurt, that kind of thing. I understand what you're saying. So I kind of want to get a little bit technical here because I've got, and so not technical, but more of a, lay out how you recommend individuals start planning for their end of life experience, because we don't know. We just don't know. You can go to the grocery store and not come home that day.
Right.
So where do you start?
Well, so it starts with conversations. I think it starts with being recognizing that it's important, that it's a valuable exercise to open up these conversations and try to find a way to become a bit more friendly with the concept of mortality.
We can't ignore it. I've never understood that. So, and people will get flippant. Well, you're born, you die, you get taxed. There's more to that than being born, dying, and being taxed. So, you need to pay attention is my point.
Yeah, I mean, some people just don't ever want to or think it's important to explore these issues or plan. And at the end of the day, for those people, if it's not stressing them, and ultimately they recognize, some of them recognize that things will change, things will happen, and then they'll need to deal with it. But they're not going to spend a lot of time in advance. And then they kind of make their own bed, because sometimes those same people have this assumption, this belief that when their health becomes more complex, more challenging, and their needs become more substantial, that the healthcare system will show up for them. It will be there to meet their needs perfectly. It won't, in most cases.
Yeah.
People don't, and then they'll have to figure it out. Sometimes they'll get lucky and they'll be guided properly with relatively little struggle and disruption. Often, though, it will turn out to be traumatic, overwhelming, frustrating, and there will be, like we talked about, unnecessary suffering. So for people who are interested in doing a little bit of planning and exploring, there's a lot of tools out there that are available. There's the 5 Wishes, the Conversation Project. People go to our website, we have some resources, and we also, one of the things that we do is we have planning sessions with people where we sit down either in person or virtually on Zoom, and we go through what's happening with them currently, what their health status is, and some people start early when they're in their 40s or 50s and they don't have a lot going on.
I was going to ask you about that. It's never too early, is it?
It's never too early. It's never too early to start the conversations and put things in place to make sure your loved ones or your healthcare agents know what you want and what you don't want, and to have it documented in a way that allows them to advocate for you the way you would want them to. Because even, you might be healthy and in your 40s, that's not going to necessarily protect you from a horrible car accident or a fall or a infection that renders you incapacitated. So it's never too early to make some of these of your wishes known and to have those conversations. But what we do is we help people who want to do it at a higher level of detail. They want to talk about what are the different things that could potentially create challenges for them or their loved ones. What happens if I have a stroke and I can't speak for myself? What happens if if something happens and I'm paralyzed? What happens if I have cancer and I'm temporarily incapacitated because of some complication? So we talk about all the things that could happen. And because of my experience as a ER doctor for 25 years and the experiences that I've had have informed me in a deeper, comprehensive way that allows me to communicate with people about some of the nuances, the subtler things that aren't addressed in an advanced healthcare directive in the standard forms that people might get from their lawyers or download from the internet. So some people really just want to have a lot of those questions addressed and create a document that indicates how they would want the final stage of their life to unfold if they could control it. And those documents only come into play if they can't speak for themselves. As long as the person is competent and can speak for themselves and weigh in on what they want or don't want, the healthcare directives and the powers of attorney are they're there just for out of interest. once they can't communicate adequately or they can't speak for themselves, that's when the power of attorney documents, the healthcare agents take over speaking for that person as and basically guiding everything that happens that from that point forward. So making sure that those people understand what you would want or don't want is truly critical. And sometimes we will facilitate those conversations as well. And I find that to be really satisfying when we can have conversations with like an older couple and their children, so that everybody is able to ask their questions and come to us an alignment and an understanding that really saves a lot of anguish when things do start to happen.
And I would think, and we have all, you, me, the audience, anybody listening, we've all seen this, the infighting that can happen after somebody passes because things were not spelled out, or I want the house, or I'm taking, everything that's in the safe, or I'm getting the dog. It's just, it can get crazy. And I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with grief. If you're working with grief brain, you probably shouldn't be making a lot of decisions.
That's
So
true.
those should be made
Yeah.
beforehand, shouldn't they?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as much as possible. So part of what we help people with is making sure that they get to the right additional resources, right? So that they have all their other documents, and not just the medical part of it, but making sure that they've communicated about their wills, and make sure that everybody has a sense of understanding and completion around how things will unfold. And we've also one of the things that we've been developing is this model where end of life doulas partner with doctors and the whole team. And end of life doulas are an incredibly invaluable resource. And I'm not many people aren't familiar with what end of life doulas do, or even many people haven't even heard of end of life doulas.
I have to tell
Um,
you, till I met you and Elizabeth, I had never heard that particular reference. So
yeah.
let's go deep into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So most people are aware of the movement that has happened in the 70s, 80s, where the birthing movement started to allow people to have prenatal care and deliveries in birthing centers, not necessarily always in the hospital, kind of demedicalizing that experience a bit, giving people more choices, more options. And midwives and doulas receive specialized training in being able to support pregnant women and families that were looking forward to bringing in a child, and then also being with them through the delivery and the postnatal period. And that was really a shift, a paradigm shift. Um, there are end of life doulas these are people who want to they want to companion patients and families who are approaching the end of life. They're like, guides or Sherpas for people who are ascending the final summit. And they come from all walks of life. Some of them have been hospice nurses or social workers or chaplains. Some of them have just had their own personal experiences around loss that they have that was really inspiring. And so there are training programs, a handful of training programs out there that are training people in becoming doulas. Um, some of it is very spiritually based and helping to um, to deal with the impending and upcoming grief. Some of it is around creating rituals that would make the dying and easier, and the time of death more beautiful and supported. Some of them are more practical in their approach and make sure that all the checklists of the things that you have to address prior to death and after death are being negotiated appropriately. Funeral homes and cremations and closing accounts and all of that. So there's a wide range of the support and services that doulas offer, but it's designed to help to reduce the overwhelm, to allow people to feel like they have a layer of support that is outside of the standard insurance model, which has its significant constraints and limitations. And so part of our mission at Empowered Endings is to recognize the value of end-of-life doulas, train them in delivering outstanding end-of-life care in the way that we've learned to do it best, and help them understand how to partner with the existing healthcare system to supplement what's already available and make sure that people have more awareness of and more respect for and feel comfortable bringing doulas into their experience, because it's really powerful.
It does make an awful lot of sense. I can't believe I had never heard of it at all. But while I'm listening to you, I'm scribbling notes, and the note, there's one word that keeps popping up, and it's journey. It is a journey. It's a personal journey. It's an inevitable journey. But if you kind of narrow it down a bit and you're thinking, say, listen, if I'm going to go on a cruise, I've got a lot of planning. Who's going to take care of the house? Who's going to take care of the pets? How long am I going to be there? How much can I afford? What's going to happen when I get back? Who's going to take care of my office? Question after question after question after question. But you don't ignore any of it because you're going on a journey.
Yeah. And most people, it's a very beautiful way to look at it. And most people have the skills that they need. They have the tools that they need to plan for a cruise. Most people don't have the skill set or the tools that they need to plan for the end of life journey. So
Is
they
it
rely on
the
others.
emotions, the fear? What do you think it is?
No, I think it's unknown. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They haven't
Yeah,
done it before.
yeah.
And I mean, after you've gone through it, you now know some of the things that you have to be prepared for and planning for. But the first time around, and hospice comes in and provides a fair amount of support. Some some experiences with hospice are wonderful, and people sing their praises. Some of them are horrific. There's not a lot of oversight of hospice care. There's a lot of hospices that are popping up. Just in San Diego alone, somebody recently did a search for how many hospices claim to be serving people in San Diego. There's 182.
Ow.
So how do you choose? How do you like find? And a lot of them are they don't have a lot of support. They don't have things aren't really fully vetted, and so people can find themselves in the most critical time of life, and where everything is so emotional and so happening so quickly, under supported and kind of left in the dark. So some hospices can help, and some people can have good experiences, but it too often is just sort of left to chance. And this isn't something that we like to take a chance with, right? There's no do-overs. You only get to do this once. So I look at approaching death like climbing a mountain peak, right? It's a final ascent. And sometimes when you're making this ascent, the weather's good and the path is clear, and it's just like put one foot in front of the other and you get to the top, and it's not terribly challenging. Other times the path is not clear at all. The weather is not good. It's dangerous, and it's blustery, and there's obstacles, and it's frankly very dangerous, and you can get scathed along the way. That's why people hire guides, to help them understand where the best paths are, where the obstacles are, how to navigate it. Some people just need a little bit of gentle guidance along the way. Some people need like some serious carrying of all of their stuff, their baggage, their experiences, and really to be pushed and sometimes carried up that mountain. So part of what we do is we just meet people where they are. We find out what they're dealing with, what their resources are, what their goals are and their wishes, and just kind of help make sure they have what they need. Meeting them where they are and providing the support and resources that would allow them to achieve those goals.
And it's so important, as you said, that family, friends, loved ones are alongside.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a lot of people going, oh, well, I just don't think you ought to do that. When my brother called and said, I'm not going to, what he said exactly was, I didn't go to dialysis today. And I just said, okay. There was no argument. We'd had the conversations. I knew he was done.
Yeah. Well, those conversations, I mean, most people who make decisions like that, they're not impulsive. They don't just wake
Oh,
up one morning and say,
no.
I'm going to stop dialysis today, and everyone's just going to have to deal with it. These are for many people, these are um, many conversations have happened. They've been thinking about it for months or years. A lot of the people who we support through the medical aid in dying process um, let us know that they've known since they were in their 20s, that one day things are going to change for them. That life is no longer going to feel like it's worth pushing and fighting, and they're going to be struggling. And when that happens, they don't want to linger. They don't want to um, experience the final horrors of terminal cancer or of ALS. Or so they've long thought about how they would want to go out. Um, and a lot of times they've been having conversations with their families, and their families are sort of already prepared. Not always. We always have people whose loved ones are kind of shocked that they're making the choices that they're making. We end up doing a fair amount of counseling and support of the loved ones to help them come to a place of understanding, come to a place of alignment, so that everybody can kind of approach that final ascent united. And and ultimately, especially when family members have had a challenge with accepting somebody's decisions, when they finally come around to understanding at a deeper level and being supportive, it really feels like a gift. It feels like they have experienced a gift, and now they're giving a gift of allowing their loved one to make these decisions free of guilt, free of a sense of
Beautifully said.
yeah.
That was our experience with, several families, several couple of family members. But one thing, and I wrote this down while you were talking too, is that, and you'll see this all the time. My mom passed, my dad passed. There was no will. We didn't know what was going to happen. And the family just went nuts. They had
Mhm.
to go in and clean out things that they never wanted to see. They had to go take care of the pets, the animals. I didn't know my mom was a hoarder. I've heard that one.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
how did you not know that?
Yeah.
But, think if you have not taken care of yourself and your family, you're leaving a big old mess behind you. You're gone, but that mess is right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that's the way that we need to approach it with folks who don't want to do the planning. They don't want to be bothered. There's more important things to do. But to let them know how that is truly a gift for their loved ones, who are going to need to clean up the messes if they don't put a bit of time and energy into making these plans. Um, and that's also, sometimes we have patients who need more support. They need caregiving, or they need nurses, or hospice, and they just don't want to be bothered. They don't want more people coming into their world. And one of the things that we have to help them understand is it's not just about you, right? I get that you're the one whose life is coming to an end, and you're the one who's dealing with these health challenges, but you're not alone. Your loved ones are right here with you, and they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed.
So
And
much.
the statistics show that the caregivers of people who die, they often experience pretty dramatic declines in their health, and sometimes even die before the person they're caring for. So sometimes it's you really have to, um, you need to be strategic and help people understand that sometimes you have to be willing to accept care, or do things that might not feel perfectly comfortable for you, but it's to benefit your loved ones and to give them the care and the support that they need down that journey.
Exactly. So, Bob, how do you foresee the end of life experience evolving in the next few years? What's been happening since we last spoke?
Well, so a few things. I think that more and more, states in this country are going to pass laws that allow the residents of those states to do medical aid in dying. So to be able to have a more gentle and peaceful, dignified end according on their own terms. I think that more and more people are going to learn about voluntarily stopping eating and drinking as a dignified, viable, empowered way for life to end, either in states that don't allow medical aid in dying, or for people who don't necessarily have a 6-month life expectancy but are suffering with a interminable and hopeless condition. People can choose to stop eating and drinking and die typically within a week to 10 days. And when it's done with understanding, knowledge, planning, and appropriate support, that can actually be a very beautiful experience. And very few people understand that. Even in healthcare, most doctors have no idea that VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, can be gentle and peaceful. So we're trying to help educate people about this as an option in the appropriate settings. And we're not promoting any particular course of action. We just want people to know that there are options, so that they don't feel trapped all the time. Especially the baby boomers, our generation is not going to tolerate what our parents and grandparents tolerated in terms of the care and support that's available or not available. They're going to want to do things differently, and it's already kind of showing up in our experience.
We said
And I'm hopeful.
I don't think I understand what grandparents saw as opposed to baby boomers. What are you talking about there?
Well, so our grandparents and our parents just let the system tell them what to do. They have this sort of reverence for doctors, and they trusted, and they didn't question. They, for the most part, when a doctor said do this, they did it. When they said don't do this, they didn't do it. Our generation, my generation, is not going to be that way. They're more demanding. They're a little bit more cynical about the healthcare and wanting things their way. And so I just see that as something that's going to drive some of the forces in healthcare.
That makes sense. Okay. I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Yeah.
But I do remember when my grandmother passed, I think she deliberately, and I don't know this, but you just reminded me. I think that she deliberately stopped eating and drinking. She got hauled to the hospital in an ambulance, and they hooked her up to, all kinds of things, and they were going to make her do what they
Make
wanted.
her live,
Yeah,
force her to live.
she was unhappy, let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet. And if we have anything to say about it, or any influence, then we will in the next 5 to 10 years see end of life care becoming a true medical specialty, and have specialist physicians and nurse practitioners and and healthcare providers who are stepping up to make sure that the end of life is not just relegated to an insurance product like hospice that does not truly meet people's needs fully, largely because doctors are almost non-existent in the actual hands-on care for hospice patients, and that's not going to be acceptable for people as we go forward. So helping to bring this model of doulas and doctors partnering and working with the traditional healthcare system is going to be an important part of our future.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have any real experience with this. Fortunately, I'm healthy and mean, so I'm going to be around for but I have watched, family members and friends, and this is just an observation. I don't know that this is true at all, but you said something that kind of triggered the thought again, is that basically from, again, my observations, once the doctor kind of signs off, the nurses take over, the hospice but they never see the doctor again. Is that about
Correct.
right, or am I
That's
wrong?
it. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
are a few hospices around, very few, that do prioritize having the doctors um, see the patients and interact with the families. The vast majority of hospice care, and at this point, I would say 90 to 95% in my experience, once the patient signs on hospice, they will never see a doctor again.
But
And
isn't there a psychological component to that? So basically, once you're signed off, the doctor's gone. You may not recognize it as a patient or not, but they've already just told you, well, good luck, goodbye.
yeah, like you don't rate enough for us to
Yeah.
spend our time and on you. And again, I don't want to, I'm not knocking hospice. I'm not
Either.
knocking
Either. It was just
and
an
the nurses are
observation.
amazing, and sometimes the nurses are provide better care than a doctor would. So not every doctor is going to be valuable in this setting. It's like when you have a doctor who is caring and is knowledgeable and is willing to be there and to listen and to empathize, there it has such an important impact. And I see it, and I see the patients, and especially families. The patients they certainly derive benefit from it, but even more, the loved ones. When a doctor is willing to be honest and to show up, there's a sense of relief almost that they're hearing from the authority, and they're getting this attention and care, and they're not just being sort of relegated to the lower
Shuffled
tier.
off. And that's what I meant about the psychology of it. It may not
Yeah.
be spoken, but I would certainly feel like, wow, that's it. You're no longer interested in me as a person. I thought, you know, you knew me pretty well. I thought I knew you pretty well. There's an ugly psychology going on there, I think.
Well, one of the things that happens is doctors who refer patients to hospice, an oncologist who doesn't feel that there's any more benefit to the treatment, and there's nothing else that they can offer from their standpoint, or a cardiologist who recognizes that the person's heart disease is at a point where there isn't any effective treatment, and so they refer these people to hospice for this compassionate comfort care at the end of life. And I think that these doctors believe that the patient is going to get equally competent, engaged care. I don't think
Uh,
doctors really understand what's happening in that world of hospice. I don't think that most of them are aware that the patients will never see a doctor again. And there's almost like they're burying their head in the sand. They almost don't want to know. They just make these assumptions, and they don't get a lot of feedback. So they just kind of keep the system just kind of keeps running, and until there's a disruption of some sort, which is kind of what we're trying to do, um, then nothing will change, and people will still struggle.
well, that's kind of been my reaction watching people come and go, sometimes go. And look, I think the medical establishment, I think y'all are amazing. I really do. But I'm aware that there are big gaps, and I'm aware that there's an awful lot of missed communications.
Yeah, there are, and all we can do right now is kind of do it patient by patient, family by family. We're also through the institute the Empowered Endings Institute. We're developing training programs and certification programs to educate more people in healthcare about the model, and educate people about optimal end of life care, and the gaps in healthcare and the options that are available. Um, and we're hoping to train more people to move to become doulas, and to move out of the traditional healthcare space into these more kind of nuanced and focused practice models. We have a plan to help create more empowered endings medical practices in different communities, and help doctors and doulas come together in partnership to provide support in those communities. And then our foundation, the Empowered Endings Foundation, is helping to promote and provide financial assistance. We have bereavement groups for people. So we're just kind of, all of these different prongs and arms are all designed to, with the same end goal in mind, which is just to continue improving end of life care for everybody.
Bob, tell me about the licensing model because I know you're working hard to get this out there. How can people who are in the medical community or they're, dealing with somebody that they think would be, as a, a they're in hospice or their mom is in hospice and they're watching all of this kind of lay out. Maybe they want to recommend to somebody that was perfect with their mom. Why don't you talk to Dr. Bob? How can they find you?
So the best way is on our website, empoweredendings.com. And there's a few different sections on there for the people that you're talking about, healthcare providers who might be interested in learning about the model and how to bring this to their community. There's a menu tab called Healthcare Partnerships, and that gives a bit of information. And at this point, it's early in this effort, so we're getting a fair amount of interest among providers in different communities, and we're looking to start rolling out a big couple of beta practices. So if people are interested, just on the website under the Healthcare Partnerships tab, it'll give them an opportunity to fill out a bit of a contact form so that we'll understand who they are, what they're looking for, and what their interest is.
Now, is this California based only, or what are your plans?
No, we're open to supporting people in various communities around the country. So there's certain things that are specific to California that and it's a bit easier for us to support practices in a sort of a geographic range, but we're open to supporting people anywhere throughout the country.
It's amazing. The work you do is just truly amazing. And I'm so glad that you do it. What are some of and I have to ask you, so we've only got a couple minutes. What are some of the current trends or developments that you're seeing? And how are they impacting what you do? And of course, I'm thinking California laws. California's known to just have these kind of funky laws pop up out of nowhere. Yeah, what's going on
I'll tell you
that
that
you're worried about right now?
I think one of some of the trends that are a bit most concerning is the number of hospice agencies that are popping up. California recently placed a moratorium on new hospice licenses because so many companies came into the market, and there's not-for-profit hospices, there's for-profit hospices, there are hospices that are venture backed, that are truly just there to make a profit. And then there are some that are truly there to serve people and support. And it's hard for somebody to differentiate. And in that, when they're in that time, that really high stress, intense crunch time, it can be very difficult to to go interviewing multiple hospice agencies to find one that feels most aligned. And the other issue is that hospitals, when people are in the hospital, they're often being pushed towards hospice, even if that may not be the most appropriate option for them in that moment. But it's the easiest way to get people out of the hospital. Hospices come in and they facilitate everything and make it very easy for the case managers, discharge planners to get people out of the hospital. And often they have relationships with specific hospice agencies that may or may not be the best quality. So people often don't have the opportunity to make really good informed decisions, and unfortunately then they find themselves in a really challenging situation. Now they've got all the equipment in the house and all the medications, and they've had these new relationships start, but they're not serving them well and they don't know what to do. So
It's a warehousing issue, isn't it?
it
In the
can
end,
be,
yeah,
yeah, and it's a big financial game. The hospices are all competing for the same patients. They're competing for the same staff. So staffing is a major issue. So I think the biggest concern that I'm seeing right now is in the proliferation of hospices that don't really have the the patients and families' best interests at heart. I have a couple of hospices that I work with here in San Diego that I love. I think they're phenomenal, um, and they show up in the way that we expect and require. But there's 180 others that that I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with or confidence in. I wouldn't say 180, but
we go back to
and,
what we were
and plus,
talking about. Don't start early.
yeah, yeah. Start your conversations. Get advocates. You need to have strong advocates. I think that's another really important factor. Is you need to, whether it's us or whether it's another end of life doula or nurse, a care manager, or a friend who's a nurse or a doctor. Ad, advocates to help you navigate the healthcare space can be incredibly, incredibly important.
Absolutely. Bob, I have found this a fascinating conversation, and I sincerely appreciate your company today. Do you have any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
No, I think this was great. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our vision and what we've been able to accomplish. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of you know, I think one of the other things I'd like to share is that this model that we've created is a beautiful model, partly because it is based on a sliding scale. So people pay a fee, and if they can pay the fee, they pay the fee. If they can't pay the fee, they pay us what they can, or they pay nothing. And I think this is a way that businesses, I don't know that every business can operate this way, um, but it's been working really well for us. And I'd love to be able to share more of that, where no one's left behind, and it's not like you have to go through a difficult qualification process or um, enrollment process. I think there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much paperwork that overwhelms and flusters people.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Didn't you
yeah,
guys tell me that you have a foundation or you're forming a foundation?
yeah, no, we have a 501(c)(3), the
Okay,
Empowered
then.
Livings Foundation,
Right.
that is a lot of great things are happening there, and a lot of energy is being put in along with the medical practice and the institute. So that's all. There's also some information about that on our website. But I appreciate your interest, your passion, enthusiasm, your vulnerable sharing as well. I, it sounds like you've been through some of your own personal experiences that that make you a real strong proponent for the work that we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. When I was introduced to you, I said yes. There was no, she
Mhm.
didn't have to talk me into meeting you. I said yes. Listen, tell people very quickly where they can find you, your online LinkedIn, your website. Give us those names if you would.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, so it's pretty easy. It's empoweredendings.com, and both on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Um, there's Empowered Endings uh, pages, and we welcome people to sign up for our newsletter so that they can learn more about what's happening. When people sign up for the newsletter or go on the site, they can request. We have a digital ebook that we created about how to empower your end of life experience, learning more about the options. So that's also available on the website. And we basically will talk with anybody who calls us for information. Part of our commitment is we want to know what people are struggling with. We want to know what questions they have. We can't necessarily deliver medical care to people outside of California, but we can certainly have brief calls with people to be able to give them resources and guidance when they're struggling with difficult circumstances.
Thank you. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing and very much needed.
Thank you.
Well, listen, everybody, as we conclude today's episode, your feedback means a lot. And if you found the show helpful, please support us with a quick review on iTunes. Your input is very vital to my mission to inspire and empower more individuals. And don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share your Partner in Success Radio with friends and colleagues. And be sure to go find Dr. Bob Uslander and Empowered Endings and connect with them. We're all going to need what he is offering sooner or later. So go find him and be sure to tell everybody you love today that you love them. You never know when the end is coming. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Dr. Bob, thank you. I genuinely appreciate you being with me here today.
Thank you, Denise.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.